Welcome back to Bible Time, episode 82. We are in Psalm 21 today. And if you guys remember all the way back to last Saturday, we ended on Psalm 20. And Psalm 20 was this request of the people that the king and Yahweh would have this relationship that was the same and it was synergistic, and the Lord was blessing and will save the king. Right? This prayer that David as a king is writing about a future king who would have this relationship with the Lord. And why are the people praying this? The people are praying this because they understand that the king is our representative. What happens to the king happens to us, right? If a king goes out in battle and he loses, there is no hope for the people. But if the king comes back victorious and they can put up a banner of victory, and for the kings in Israel, that means that God is with them and God is victorious with them as well. And so their hope of salvation from their enemies and from all the problems of this evil world, their hope is in that the king and the Lord have the right relationship. Right, so this request of Psalm 20 where may the Lord do this, may he do this for the king, may he do that. And so before we get into this psalm, go ahead and read all the way through 20, read those 9 verses, then read this as well, read chapter 21, and we'll see how we go from request to answer. Right, the petition of the Lord to, Lord, do this, and to see that the Lord has done it, and this is what it means for us. So let's get into this. Let's look at our superscription. This is a reminder that we are, we're talking about the temple, right? The choir director in the temple where Israel was to come to worship. And this reminder that we are coming from King David. He understands that he has all the promises of the kings, the promise that he's going to have a throne forever, and all that we find in 2 Samuel 7. I reference this all the time. And it's so pertinent to understand because it informs what David believes about the coming king. Right? So verse 1 says this, O Lord, in your strength the king will be glad, and in your salvation how greatly he will rejoice. Right? So the strength of the king is the strength of the Lord. Right? O Lord, in your strength the king will be glad. The king understands that the Lord fights for him. Right? The idea of a king going out to battle in Israel is that if they trusted the Lord, the numbers that they had, their people, the amount of men in the military didn't matter. And there's multiple times in the Bible where the Lord will show that he doesn't need the vast armies, even when the people are afraid and have doubts. Not only does he not need the vast armies, there's times in the Bible where the Lord doesn't need any armies, and he can fight for himself. Right? So this king understands that all the strength he has as a king will be from the Lord. And he understands that the salvation, the ability of God to save, this is all from the Lord, and how greatly he will rejoice. Right? This king knows that his salvation comes from the Lord. And so you already have this king who's expecting good news of the work of the Lord. And verse 2 says, you have given him his heart's desires, right? This prayer of the people, the people are addressing God, saying, you, Lord, have given him, talking about the king, his heart's desires. Right? And what was our hope and expectation from this last psalm was that in Psalm 20, verse 4, the hope and expectation was that may the Lord grant the king his desires. And this is the proclamation that he has. Right? You have given him his heart's desires. And his heart's desires aren't, random things. They're not worldly things. We know that this king has a right relationship with the Lord. Right? In the very end of Psalm 19, verse 14 says, may the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart, be pleasing to you. And so this king has the right heart. This king has the right words. And so when we see that his desires are fulfilled, it's the desires that are in line with the Lord. Right, so you've given him the heart's desires. You have not withheld the requests of his lips. So his heart, his words, all of this is in line with the Lord. And the Lord has fulfilled those desires. Right, and more than that, it says that for you meet him. Right, that God comes out into the presence of the king, that you have met him with blessings and good things. It's, I get this image even of the prodigal son, where the son has come home and he doesn't expect anything, but this dignified father who owns everything, runs out and meets him with gifts, right? And so even better than a worthless son who deserves nothing coming home is this king who deserves good things, who has done what is right, and the Lord has met him with blessings of good things. And you've set a crown of fine gold on his head, right? So this king has a unique reign, where the Lord himself is honoring this king's reign, and the Lord himself has blessed it. Right? And then, we're talking to the Lord here. We're saying that he has life of you. This king requested life from the Lord. And it says not only, what was God's response? Not only did he give him life, it says you gave it to him, length of days forever and ever. Right? I've got this distinct memory where Jared is talking about what is expected of the perfect king when we think about 2 Samuel 7. It's that he's got to have a throne that goes on forever and ever. And so you have to have a king who can live forever and ever. Right? And this king has requested life of the Lord, and the Lord has given him life eternal forever and ever. And so all this fulfillment, what more can be hoped for in your king but that he is a perfect king with a perfect relationship with God, that he has the right heart and he has the right words, and that he is met with blessings from the Lord, and that you don't ever have to worry about this king dying, that this king is going to live forever and he's going to reign forever. You're going to have to forgive my formatting here. I wanted the verse to fit on the same page. But let's keep going. Verse 5 says, his glory is great through your salvation. Splendor and majesty you place upon him. Right? So when the Lord provides salvation for his king, it actually ends up and it results in glory and splendor and majesty for the king. Right? All these things that we would be understanding, we'd be used to the idea of glory and majesty and splendor. If we were Israelites at the time, this would all be things that are true of Yahweh. But there's going to be a king who is, when he's saved, it's going to result in all these things for him. And you're going to, just like the Lord placed a crown on his head, splendor and majesty are going to be placed on him. And you make him the most blessed forever, just in case all these descriptions, all these words made you think that maybe this king was lacking something or there's going to be a better king after him. No, this is the guy. You make him the most blessed forever. You make him joyful with gladness in your presence. In your presence. Man, this is a unique and special idea, right? What was it that we said that, in your presence is joy forevermore. At your right hand, there's fullness of joy. This idea of the presence of God. So this king is not only going to be blessed here on earth and blessed with a kingdom that's not going to end and a life that's not going to end, but he's actually going to experience the presence of God. That's what we've been wanting, right? That's what we wanted from the day that the Lord had to search for Adam and Eve in the garden when they were hiding because of their shame, and separation ensued where God cast them out of the garden. From that day on, we want to be restored to the presence of God. We want to be with God, and this king is going to know what that means. He's going to be joyful, and he's going to have gladness in the presence of God. Right? And why does this give us hope? It's because we are under this king. This king, what happens to him, he represents us, and he brings those blessings to us. Right? For the king trusts in the Lord. What a hope we have that our king trusts in the Lord. And through the loving kindness, through the hesed love of the Most High, he will not be shaken. Right? So when this king comes, when this king reigns, we don't have to worry about a time where it's going to be really great and he's going to be blessed, but then a time that ultimately fails. Right? We get to have the hope that he will not be shaken, that his kingdom is going to be an everlasting kingdom, that we have the hope that we're being brought into a kingdom that cannot be shaken. Right? And these next verses sound very similar to Psalm 18, where Psalm 18 was this epic kind of glimpse into that time where the king is going to be fighting his enemies. Right? And some of this language is very similar. Your hand will find out all your enemies. Your right hand will find out those who hate you. Right? So we're talking to the king here that your enemies aren't going to stand a chance, and your ability to act, your hand and your right hand, you're going to find those who oppose you, and all authority is going to be yours. Right, verse 9, you will make them as a fiery oven in the time of your anger. Right, when the anger of the Lord comes, when the anger of Jesus comes, it's going to be as the fiery oven, a fiery oven for his enemies. And parallel with this idea of the king's anger is the idea of the Lord's anger, right? It's the same. They have the same will, right? They are completely in sync. The king's going to judge them, and the Lord is going to swallow them up in his wrath, and the fire will devour them. Right? This is Psalm 2. Right? This warning to the kings of the world to stop devising against the Lord and against his anointed, and stop rebelling against their cause, and stop rebelling against their will, because their wrath is going to burn against you, and his wrath is quickly kindled. You need to submit to the Son. You need to kiss the Son, as Psalm 2 says. Right, verse 10, their offspring you will destroy from the earth, and their descendants from among the sons of men. Right, this word offspring, this is, right out of Genesis 3:15, when we have this promise that there's going to be enmity, there's going to be strife between the seed of the woman, who is this king, and the seed of Satan, who are all these descendants of men who do not repent, men who do not get redeemed, right? All these descendants of the wicked one. And so he's saying that you're going to destroy them from the earth. You're actually going to get rid of all evil from the earth and from among the sons of men, right? And how do we know that this is, this is talking about the fallen men? Well, this is the word Adam, right? This common kind of term for man, but this idea of mankind, that all the descendants, all the people who are descendants of Satan and rebels against God are going to be destroyed by the king, right? And this verse sounds like Psalm 2. Though they intended evil against you and devised a plot, they will not succeed. Right? They will not succeed. Why do the nations rage and the peoples plot in vain? Psalm 2. Why do they think they stand a chance against the Lord and against his anointed? Because they will not succeed. They don't have a chance. Right? And remember in Genesis 12 and following, where God makes a promise to Abraham, and he says, I will bless those who bless and curse those who curse. Right? So even if these people intend evil against them, even if these people intended evil against the people of God and against this king, they don't stand a chance. Right? It doesn't matter what they devised, they're not going to succeed. They're going to fail. Right? The Lord said what some intend for evil, the Lord plans for good. In verse 12, for you will make them turn their backs. You're going to make these enemies retreat. They're going to flee. They're not going to stand a chance. How often in the Psalms have we seen David cry out and say that he is surrounded, right? And that the enemies seem overwhelming, but he confesses and trusts in the Lord. Now we see you're going to make the enemies turn back, right? For you will aim your bowstring at their faces. Man, what a powerful description of the wrath that's going to come against these enemies. The idea that he's going to aim his bowstring at them. We saw in Psalm 11 that it was the enemies who were aiming their bows at the righteous. And so God is saying this king is going to make everything right. The innocent and the weak and the downcast are going to be saved. And these enemies who think that they're so powerful and who trust in themselves, they're going to experience what it's like to face the wrath of God for their sins. This is what the king's going to do. So verse 13, be exalted, O Lord, in your strength. We will sing and praise your power. Right? So all of this, the judgment of the king, the right relationship of the king with the Lord, all of this seeks to exalt Yahweh. Right? And it shows that only God could have done it. Right? And what is our job? God's done this, right? God is exalted, and we're gonna sing and we're gonna praise. Right? We're going to sing and praise, and we're going to see your strength and your power, and we're going to know that can only be you. And I think for us as believers, so often it's easy to take 10 looks at ourselves and 1 look at Christ. And we're discouraged, and we don't see the growth we want, and we see sin in our lives, and we see all these things. And in reality, it should be we take 10 looks at Christ for every 1 look at ourselves. Right? To see that in this psalm, we're not commanded to do anything. Sure, we see great examples of what Christ has done and what he's able to do, right? But there's not a command of obedience. All we see and what we get to enjoy is this description of one who is obedient and one who has a right relationship with the Lord and one who's going to make everything right. And the salvation of this king and the salvation security that he's going to bring is the hope that we have. So we should be spending time meditating on what has Christ done. What has he done? What has he done? What is he doing? What will he do? And that's actually what motivates our obedience, right? Not looking at ourselves all the time and trying to measure up to what we think a believer looks like, but to look at Christ and to say, this is what Christ has done. He has freed me from the bondage of sin. He has freed me from the enslavement of the law, and he has brought me into a position where I can freely obey him, right? And we get to see this is what Christ has done. And just going ahead tomorrow, we're going to see Psalm 22, where from really Psalms 17, 18, 19, 20 21, we've been seeing this king, victorious, right relationship with the Lord, right view of God's word. And then we get to Psalm 22, and from him being raised to the heights, we see this suffering and rejected king, right? My God, why have you forsaken me? And we'll be taken to the cross and why the suffering of Christ was necessary. And so as we just think about the Psalms we've been in for the last few weeks, this is really the encouragement and the conviction that we should have, is that we need to look to Christ and what he has done first and foremost. And that is how we live the Christian life. So I will see you tomorrow, and we'll get to be right at the foot of the cross in Psalm 22.